from Khemmis?
It is. Hey, Max. How are you?
Hey there. Hey, this is Morin from Bucketlist Music Reviews. I think you already know that, though. Hey there, man.
I do,
yeah.
Good. I just got off work and just hopped in the car, so good timing.
Perfect. Where are you speaking to me from right now? Like where?
I'm in Boulder, Colorado right now.
Oh, sweet, Boulder, yeah. I've seen before you guys are from Denver. Do you live in Denver, or do you live out in Boulder?
I'm the only one that doesn't live in Denver. I live in Longmont, which is like a suburb north of the city, basically.
Oh, okay, cool. Anyway, well, thanks for coming.
It's a little cheaper.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
It's like that all over? Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks for talking to me today.
Of course.
Might as well just jump right into it. You guys have this new album out for anyone that's listening right now. That new album is called Desolation. It's your first one since Hunted back in 2016. And I got to start by asking, what's different now compared to when you guys started out with Hunted? It seems you've just shot up in popularity since then. Like, what was different?
Well, a lot of what, kind of determines, we really had like a big uptick in popularity after Hunted came out because it got pretty good critical reception kind of across the board. And even though we're on a pretty small independent label, I think that there was enough kind of word of mouth and excitement about it on the internet that from those reviews and stuff that a lot more people just picked up on it. And we also did a fair amount of touring, kind of between then and now. And, some of those were a little bit more high profile tours. Like we were on tour with Enslaved for a month earlier this year and with Oathbreaker before that in the fall. And so I think that those helped expand our audience a little bit too. But, really like the biggest things were probably Rolling Stone having Hunted on their list of the best metal albums of 2016.
Yeah, that must be crazy with Rolling Stone. Like, how did that even come around even? Did that just happen all of a sudden? They put it up there? Or
I honestly have no idea. I have no idea how they found out about it or anything, A person that, has written about us before for Metal Sucks wrote the write-up for Rolling Stone for that list, so maybe he introduced them to it or something like that, and so that was really cool. The bummer about it was that it didn't make it into print magazine at all. It was just like an online feature, so part of me was like, fuck, so close, but
so close, but still, online's just as good these days. Like you can say that for the rest of your life, I guess. Hey, we were once put on Rolling Stone's top 20 albums of the year. Like that's a big one. It's the Holy Rolling Stone, we call it. Like,
the old-fashioned dude in me would have definitely gone and bought the newspaper or the magazine on the newsstands though, and cherished it forever. So I was, here's to hoping for them to do a review of the new album or something actually in the print magazine. That would be really cool, but we'll see. I don't think that'll actually happen.
Well, you never know. If they like the last one, they'll probably at least give it a spin at Rolling Stone.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And, so kind of the other things that sort of shaped what happened with Desolation, other than the band becoming more popular, which, really didn't have that much to do with, what musically we were going to do with the next record, was that we had a pretty shitty year and a half, personally. Oh. And that really kind of determined, that we were going to take what we thought was, a darker and heavier and angrier sort of approach to the new album. And that's kind of, the primary sort of difference, at least emotionally. Kind of Hunted was really more a reflection of, fear and kind of psychological terror of all these dreams that I've been experiencing. And then the new album is much more of a reflection of kind of grief and loss and anger and remorse
Fury
about
stuff.
sort of
Sounds like
things happening in our lives. Yeah.
Well, it's a shame to hear about. What happened, if you don't mind me asking? You're saying that you had a really shitty kind of year and a half there.
I don't really want to go into too many specifics because not all the story is mine. You know, it has to do with kind of everybody in the band, and there's really, you know, it's not really my place to talk about. But, you know, like probably the easiest one is just kind of the disappointment with basically like, you know, this is like the biggest, broadest one that I think anyone can get behind and doesn't get into anything personal. It's just sort of general disillusionment about sort of the political system and where we're at as a society, and that, you know, really like sort of this kind of more populist like anger and frustration. And I really became frustrated with just how fucking siloed people have become and refusing to talk to each other in any kind of constructive way, and that it's either you're for us or against this kind of thing, and that's just not the reality of life at all.
Not at all.
One of the kind of, you know, like sort of themes that shows up in like the first song on the new record is that it's really this expression of hopelessness and anger about that situation, about people being so fragmented and being unwilling to look inside themselves and see the commonalities that they have with people, and that we're basically just killing ourselves by refusing to do that. So, you know, that's like, without getting into any personal details, that's like an example of, you know, just one thing sort of adding to the pile, and then on top of that, sort of struggles with mental health, and the loss of important people in our lives, and those kinds of things, you know, all kind of coming together, and just all of us feeling very lost and hopeless in sort of the process of writing the album, kind of concluding with what ends up being actually, like, in my mind, a really hopeful note at the end of the album, which was the last song that we had written, and that I was writing the lyrics basically right before we went into the studio, and I started to reflect on just how amazing it was, this, you know, the interest in our band and how much the songs that we were writing had meant to people, and how grateful we really were for all of that. And I kind of found this renewed sense of purpose and hopefulness right before we went into the studio, just in reflecting on how much, you know, making this art means to us personally, but also to other people, it seems like. And so that ended up being like a theme too that I try to express in the end of the album. So, you know, it kind of runs the gamut from, I think, being like the darkest and most hopeful stuff that we've ever written to, at the end, kind of this resolution and sort of like the closing of a chapter in our lives when we were, you know, recording the album, and really felt like we were like exercising some demons in doing that and committing it to tape.
Wow, that's one hell of a story. It's not what we usually hear on here about the process behind writing an album. And you're so right though about how how that sort of stuff, like this whole populist wave, people not talking, even if it's not directly affecting you at that time, it's just this atmosphere of it can get kind of suffocating, and like, you're right, it can lead to a kind of like almost hopeless, nihilistic sort of feeling about everything. Like, and that's why I think it's so cool that you guys tried to translate that into this new album rather than just, you know, getting lethargic kind of about it and just letting things happen. But that's always, you always get the best sort of art from that, when it's, whether it's like one specific event or if it's just like sort of a general malaise atmospheric thing. It really can impact an album in so many ways. And I have to say, I've listened to the new album, and that really does come through on it. You guys nailed that doom metal sort of sense of, well, for lack of a better term, impending doom almost. Like, but you're right, it cheers up as you go through, and I find that that's important, because if you just stick to like the dark and depressing and stuff, eventually it's almost not fun to hear after, like, you know, a whole album of it. So it's great that you guys can put a little bit of a spark into there that lightens it up, and it makes the other stuff like contrast, you know?
Yeah, you know what's interesting that really that the band has. I mean, I guess this isn't necessarily true, but this is the first time that I consciously made a decision to write a song that had like an uplifting sort of message to it. Mm-hmm. That was actually like a really hard and felt like a really risky proposition to me because, you know, it's pretty hard to find a song that's like intends to express something positive in metal that doesn't come off as being like really cheesy or overwrought.
Yeah, exactly. You get that kind of, I call it an Yngwie Malmsteen metal. You get that tight pants.
Yeah, totally.
Master of the universe sort of thing, which sometimes you're just not really feeling. Like,
yeah. So that was actually an interesting challenge, and I sort of had this, like, I was having this day when I wrote that final song, the lyrics for that final song, where I was just feeling like incredibly sort of like devoid of any inspiration and didn't know what I was going to write about, and just thought that like I was kind of fucked with this last song. And then I really, you know, sort of had this reflection that I was talking about with kind of what, you know, the music has sort of turned into for myself personally and for my bandmates and for other people that we've talked to. And they just like kind of poured out, you know, and I ended up writing the whole thing in like a half hour, the lyrics, and just like being like really unsure of myself as soon as it came out that like maybe it was crossing the line to being cheesy, and but then I sort of like, the more I reflected on it, I realized that it was like really a very true expression of something that meant a lot to me, and that I knew that every time that we've done that with a song where I felt like I was being too like open and risking too much by saying something, that those are usually the songs that end up connecting the most with people. Like, for instance, like the song The Bereaved from our first album was that way. And so in the end, I knew that that was actually a really good sign. So I sort of expect that I hope that that song in particular connects on an emotional level with some people, but I hope that the whole album generally does, because we don't really have any interest in writing like some sword and sorcery type, you know, lyrics, even though the album art maybe is misleading in that sense. But, you know, for me, I've always enjoyed when the words mean something and are an expression of something emotional and honest, and so that's kind of, you know, usually my goal, at least with vocals, is to sort of try to my best to communicate what that emotion and that message and that feeling and that imagery that I'm trying to get across is. So that's, you know, kind of my hope with the album, is that you know, it'll continue to do that. I don't even know what the question was anymore at this point. I'm just kind of rambling, I guess.
No, that's great. We were just talking about how, like, it really is just, you can't replace that when you have a real feeling like that, and it shows, especially in metal, which is usually such, as you said, a kind of overwrought, almost cheesy thing. But when you get down to an issue or a feeling that you personally identify with, it somehow just comes across so much better than if you're talking about, like, I don't know, slaying orcs or worshiping Satan or something, which, well, fun or not exactly identifiable emotions all the time. Maybe worshiping.
I mean, hell, sometimes people are so passionate about those things that I believe them too, and I get the same kind of experience from it. But it's pretty rare. I mean, like, you know, maybe like on Stargazer, like that song that Dio sang with Rainbow, maybe that's like the one example of like a sword and sorcery song where like I fucking feel it, you know? Yeah. But and then like I think a lot of that, like early Norwegian and Scandinavian black metal, where, you know, it's definitely just about Satan, is
it's just so
pretty powerful too in its own way. Yeah, because you can tell that they're fucking like living and dying by that, you know, and they literally were. So there is still a place for those things, definitely, but that's not what those things don't mean anything to me on that level. So, you know, it would be dishonest, I think, for that to be what we were expressing in our songwriting.
Well, plus you guys seem like you're looking forward more than just like trying to do something that someone else has done, you know, whether it's Dio or the early black metal stuff. Like, you guys can manage to put your own stamp on it, sort of thing, rather than just redo what somebody else has already done. It's
yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely an intention. Like, one of the things that we set out to do with this band when we first started, and has kind of always been our MO, was just to create music that we didn't see already existed that we wanted to hear. So for us, that meant combining a particular set of influences in a way that we didn't think that we had exactly seen before, because it was something that we wanted to hear, and that being the primary motivation, you know. So we're definitely motivated by, like you said, sort of wanting to do something just like a little bit different and that's forward thinking, just so that we have something like new to listen to that we think is cool more than anything else, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's usually how this sort of stuff comes up. Like, it's always good to have influences, but that old thing about wearing your influence on your sleeve, like, when I listen to this new album, I can hear bits of other bands in there, you know. I hear some of Candlemass, some Black Sabbath, obviously, like every freaking Doom band has to worship at the shrine of the gods and everything. But there's also so many other things at play, too, that it makes it much more interesting, and again, it's fresher. You know, it doesn't feel like it could have come out in any year. It feels like a 2018 sort of album, and that's one thing I find.
I was just going to say that, like, I think that the best thing for this album, in terms of like a big long-term picture, would be that it both sounds like 2018. But it also sounds like we could be a band that existed at the same time as, like, Judas Priest and Black Sabbath, like, back then. Like, something that we were shooting for was, like, kind of, like, with the, like, knowledge that we have now of, like, death and black metal, like, what would it sound like if we were just a contemporary of Judas Priest, you know? And before people had subdivided metal into all these subgenres, and before they were so concerned with sounding a certain way, a band like that was really adventurous. And I think that, like, Sad Wings of Destiny, if anybody put that record out today and it hadn't come out when Judas Priest put it out, it would be considered a doom metal album. But nobody's ever talked about Judas Priest being a doom metal band, and we wanted to kind of, like, you know, accept that as like a challenge, like just assert ourselves as a metal band without needing any kind of further description, because we would be pulling from so many things and trying to assert such a singular sort of vision, the confluence of all those influences, that our hope is that we sort of bake those subgenre labels and kind of just, you know, if you have to mention, like, there's this doom / death / black / trad metal band, Khemmis, then, you know, I think
so many things right away.
It's probably just easier to drop all of those words and just call it a metal band.
Exactly. Have you ever found all those subgenres and stuff, they tend to, like, almost stifle creativity rather than what they're supposed to do, which is they're supposed to make your sort of imagination and creativity better, but sometimes I found you just end up pigeonholing yourself. Is that what you found?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of talking to, I think, is like that it's kind of like the rest of the world, you know, when I was talking earlier about everybody being so siloed and separate and having their own distinct sort of subcultures that they're living in and failing to talk to each other. I think music has kind of gone too far that way as well. and that there's still some really good things being created at the extremes of these like subgenres that we've created. At a certain point, it's really hard to find creativity in doing something that has been done before, and that for us, sort of the wellspring of inspiration is from drawing from all of these other areas that are disparate from each other, and then trying to connect it with the spirit of this like fun and adventurous music that was being created in the 70s, where people didn't have those boundaries yet. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is like that we want to try and tap into that sort of initial inspiration that we all had when we first heard, you know, the gateway drug to metal that we had, and try to like re-express that excitement that we had when we were teenagers or kids for the genre, by just drawing from everything that we think is cool and that we think is inspiring. So that's sort of our goal as chemists, or at least that's what I feel like my goal is, I guess, in the band, if I can't speak for everyone else. But, you know, for me, it was Judas Priest was my entryway into metal, and that's kind of where I draw the heaviest inspiration from. You know, so at a certain point, it ends up getting frustrating to be called like a doom metal band when it's like not what we're really shooting for. You know, aesthetically, I see how it makes sense, obviously, but you know, the spirit is much more like rock and roll and kind of more freewheeling than you associate with doom metal. And I think that comes through for people, especially in our live show. And so you know, it's somewhat limiting to be perceived that way.
Yeah, well, the term can sometimes get stuck and it's hard to get out. I like what you said, though, about, like, the sort of rediscovering the original love of metal. I think it was an interview with Bruce Dickinson I saw from Iron Maiden, where he said to play heavy metal well, you have to be able to put your mind into the mind of a permanent, like, 15-year-old. And you have to, with every song, strive to recreate that feeling you had when you were 15 and what you imagine a 15-year-old now would say. And, yeah, it's sort of funny. It seems that you're bringing across the same thing. That was Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, so he's been doing this, like, for forever. And he still says that that's how they approach every song that they write. So it's really cool. Amazing. Yeah, it seems to be a sort of universal feeling across the spectrum. All right.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, totally. All right, so don't have too much more time, so just a couple of questions I'd like to ask you about the future now. So this album's coming out. I see you guys have 3 big shows lined up where you're going to play the whole thing. And what's the plan after that? Any festival appearances, tour for the album, anything like that?
We're going to be, you know, somewhat in your neck of the woods. We're doing Evy Montreal this year.
Oh, awesome.
So we're doing that, and we're doing a festival in Pittsburgh the 2 days before that, that our U.S. label, 20 Bucks Fin, puts on. And that was a really fun time. We played it a couple of years ago. And it's with, like, it's just got a bunch of really good bands that are, you know, somewhat more, like, underground. But it's just, like, a really well-curated festival. It has, like, Mournful Congregation and Krallis and, like, Vow and, you know, like all these bands that, like, you would not expect to see together necessarily, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
And then we have
cool in a festival format. Yeah.
Oh, totally, yeah. And there's only one stage, so you see every band, which I really love. And yeah, so that's going to be really cool. We have, like, some other stuff coming up a little bit later in the fall that we haven't, like, announced yet, so I can't really talk about. But, yeah, we're kind of just doing, right now we're kind of just focusing on doing, you know, sort of these, like, 3 or 4 day kind of weekend sort of jaunts where we can go and play a couple festivals or do, like, a short run of dates someplace that we haven't played in a while. And that's kind of what we're basing sort of our touring around right now. Rather than leaving for, like, a long time. And,
yeah, well, assuming you don't get worn out when you do it like that, you'll be more fresh every time you hit the stage. if you're doing it like that versus if you're in the bus for weeks and weeks at a time?
In some ways, it's actually more tiring if you're flying everywhere between, because you get all dried out from the fucking airplane, and it's just like, there's something like unnecessarily stressful about flying that isn't really there when you're just driving like every day. So like yes and no. It just works better for our schedules because we all have jobs and families and stuff. Doesn't mean that we don't go and tour like normal sometimes, but you know, it has to be at the right time of year where we can all get time off and be an opportunity where it's worth it for us to do that, you know, because we do have to kind of sacrifice a little bit. So, you know, we're not all like 20 years old anymore, and it just makes it a little bit harder to do that stuff. But so we have some stuff coming up the rest of the year, and we also have a lot of time open where we're kind of trying to figure out what we want to do. In some ways, it kind of makes sense for the new record to come out and see people's receptions to it and see what opportunities open up from that than trying to book ourselves out too far in advance right now, because we have a feeling
fair
that...
enough. And like, plus, you can even see like where they like it, you know, sort of thing. Like, you could even plot it out that way if this place here blows up.
That's true. That's true, yeah. Like, you know, in my mind at least, I think that this new record is, and I know that most bands say this, but I really actually think this is sort of the culmination of like what we shoot for as a band, and that I think that it's the best thing we've done so far. Just more confident and more of the things that we feel that make us the band that we are, and it's just like more immediate but also more complex. And so I think that I hope that this record puts us kind of on a new level, and that, you know, there will be a whole new sort of like array of opportunities that are available because of that. So that's kind of the hope, is that, you know, hopefully we'll see you sometime in the near future up there in the Great White North, but that, you know, it'll be with fucking, this is going to be too ambitious, but with fucking like Metallica or something.
Sweet.
And
always high.
Yeah, exactly. But then you're always disappointed too, and that's always good for Doom. So, you know, whatever.
So you shoot high, and then if you get disappointed, great, that'll just feed into the next album. Win-win.
Exactly, yeah.
Sounds like win-win situation.
You know, but we would certainly settle for like being on tour with At the Gates or something like that. Or, you know, we'll find a way to come up there, you know, and we kind of want to like try and pick an interesting opportunity, you know, like something like At the Gates would be cool, because I don't think people would necessarily expect that, but they're an inspiration to us. And one of the first bands we were talking about when me and Ben started playing these guitar harmonies together, sort of in the context of the kind of music we were making, was like, oh, what if like we did this At the Gates thing? And we weren't even talking about Iron Maiden at the time when we were playing those harmonies. You know, and then kind of went from there to Iron Maiden, but really like the
sort of At the Gates probably when they started out. I imagine they got compared to Iron Maiden too when they were starting.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. And like, you know, the actual like interval, like the harmonic interval that we tend to use for those guitar harmonies is like the same one that At the Gates uses, rather than the one that like Iron Maiden tends to use. So yeah, you know, musically that homage is definitely there, and bands like In Flames, you know, back when they were actually good, and stuff like that. So
I'm weird. I still like In Flames. It's just that they're so different now. It's the same band. I don't know. They've had a few good songs. If you forget that it's In Flames and pretend it's a new band that you've never heard of, then it's okay. But I do agree. Yeah, they were so much better back in the day. Just erase it.
Yeah, Clayman is like the last one that I'll do. That's the last one I'm okay with.
Yeah, everyone's got their own cutoff for In Flames. All right, so this has been a really good talk here. It's gone to places I didn't think that we were going to go, but I always have to end with this question, because this is Bucketlist Music Reviews. So in that spirit, I have to ask you, what's on your bucket list? If you had to just break it down to a few sentences, what's on your bucket list?
Okay. Okay. I would like for us to play like on a mountaintop from Lord of the Rings in New Zealand. That would be like a cool thing that I just thought of, and that I thought sounded like a good thing to say.
Do it up where the beacons of Gondor are. Play on
exactly, yeah, on one of the beacons. Yep.
Yeah.
With Metallica.
See another band start playing way over on the next mountain.
Oh, that would be sick.
Yeah. Music video idea. You heard it here first.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And preferably that show is with Metallica or Iron Maiden or Judas Priest. Those are the other portion of the music bucket list. And then personally, I would, hell, I'll go back to the Rolling Stone thing. I'd like to see our band be in a print version of Rolling Stone at some point. That would be kind of the peak of my commercial aspirations for the band. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, it's still got so much power to it. Just like I said, the holy Rolling Stone. Well, anyway.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that magazine, it fucking sucks now, but I don't care. Like, that's what I grew up like I had a subscription to that growing up, and I would read it every week when it came out or whatever. And, I don't know. It's like still important to me. I'm not like over like the black rock and roll press, even though it kind of sucks these days, that's like the true bar of making it in my mind is, like you're in Rolling Stone. Congratulations, Sonny. You made it.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, like you said, I'll always shoot high, and if it doesn't turn out, there's always the next album. That's,
yeah, I'm sure I'm going to get crushed by Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been a great talk. I'd like to thank you for speaking to me all the way up here in Canada in the Great White North, as you say. And I hope that the album release goes great. It's coming out, for anyone listening, that's coming out next Friday, June 22nd. It's called Desolation.
Yeah, I'm really excited for everyone to hear it. And are you guys going to do a review of it or anything like that?
Absolutely. Yep.
Oh, okay, good. Cool. And is this going to be a written interview or a podcast kind of thing?
The review will be written. This interview itself will be more of a podcast thing.
Okay, cool. So this is a really weird way then this is a really weird way for that podcast to end then with me asking whether it's going to be a podcast. But thanks for listening and thanks for having me.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Max.
This is Max Morin with Bucketlist signing off. Thank you very much.